as Texas students clash over Israel-Hamas war, Governor Greg Abbott orders colleges to revise free speech policies. This is from the Texas Tribune. As the Israel-Hamas war continues to ignite tensions among Texas college students, Governor Greg Abbott issued an executive order requiring schools to discipline what he described as the sharp rise in anti-Semitic speech and acts on university campuses. Higher education institutions are expected to update their free speech policies to include the definition of anti-Semitism, as well as establish and enforce punishments for violating those policies. Expulsion from the college could be considered an appropriate punishment, Abbott said. Texas supports free speech, especially on university campuses, but that freedom comes with responsibilities for both students and the institutions themselves, Abbott wrote in the Wednesday executive order. The Israel-Hamas war has tested free speech policies at universities in Texas and across the country as pro-Palestine and pro-Israel students engage in protests and heated discussions. School leaders have struggled to strike a balance between their roles as moderators and facilitators of intellectual debate on campus. In the Wednesday order, the governor singled out Palestinian student groups on campuses, including the Palestine Solidarity Committee and Students for Justice in Palestine. Those groups were also punished at Columbia University, especially the second one. I'm not sure about the first one. I believe the first one was too, but definitely the second one, who he says have violated free speech policies and should be subject to discipline. The founder for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE for short, you've probably heard of them, an advocacy group for free speech on college campuses, said Texas colleges can and should go after anti-Semitic harassment, threats, and violence, but Abbott's executive order goes too far and leans on a definition of anti-Semitism that would involve punishing students for core political speech, including any criticism of Israel, the group said. FIRE is actually a principled free speech organization. They speak up for right-wingers and left-wingers. They're the new ACLU. Exactly. They'll speak up for you no matter who you are. State-mandated campus censorship violates the First Amendment and will not effectively answer anti-Semitism, FIRE said in a statement. By chilling campus speech, the executive order threatens to sabotage the transformative power of debate and discussion. Abbott has been unequivocal in his support of Israel, even traveling to Jerusalem in November to offer the state's help. And in December, he told Texas colleges they had a responsibility to protect Jewish students. Abbott has not commented on if and how universities should protect pro-Palestine students who have also faced threats and harassment since the start of the war. The governor said in a statement Wednesday that the executive order will mean campuses are safe spaces for the Jewish community, actually going as far as to use the word safe spaces, despite his sure knowledge that that particular phrase has been a target of the right as it pertains to left-wing safe spaces, especially on college campuses. It comes months after the state dismantled diversity, equity, and inclusion offices, whose responsibilities included making college more inclusive to students of all cultures and backgrounds. See? So not really a principled position, more of a political attack. Per Abbott's order, the chair of the Board of Regents at each college has 90 days to share documentation verifying revisions were made to free speech policies and evidence that those policies have been enforced. So let's go to Matt Walsh, who chimed in on this. Now, keep in mind, Matt Walsh, podcaster.
And before we move on, I just want to make this point because not all, but most crazy Zionists are liberals. They're mostly like Juliana Margulies, right? I marched with Black Lives Matter. Why aren't you supporting my genocide?
Yeah, so those are the ones we know. I mean, I don't know if most of them as a percentage of the whole are like that. I think it's probably split. I think it's pretty bipartisan.
Okay. The Hollywood Zionists are very much in that camp, liberal elite Zionists. What do they make of the fact that their strongest support comes from like Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott?
Right.
This is why I'm saying we've talked about this. There's going to be a wave of those types of Zionists becoming Republicans. They're all going to go Barry Weiss. You're my real people. You stand with Israel.
Right. Of course. Well, Michael Rappaport already signaled he might have to vote for Pig Dick Donald Trump. over this, right? Let's go to Matt Walsh, though. He is not a Hollywood type. He is with the Daily Wire, though. And given what just happened to Candace Owens for stepping out of line on this issue, this was a pretty ballsy thing for him to come out and say. So he will read a statement from Abbott, and then he will give his take.
Abbott signs an executive order to fight anti-Semitism on college campuses. And what does fighting anti-Semitism mean? Well, here's the statement that the governor's office put out this week. Quote, Governor Greg Abbott today issued an executive order to fight the increase in acts of anti-Semitism at colleges and universities in Texas and ensure a safe learning environment for Jewish students and all Texans. Quote, anti-Semitism is never acceptable in Texas, and we will do everything we can to fight it, said Governor Abbott. The state of Texas stands with Israel and the Jewish community, and we must escalate our efforts to protect against anti-Semitism at Texas colleges and universities and across our state. Across the country, acts of anti-Semitism have grown in number, size, and danger to the Jewish community since Hamas's deadly attack on October 7th. Texas took immediate action to protect Jewish schools, synagogues, and other key locations. Many Texas colleges and universities have also acted quickly to condemn anti-Semitism, but some radical organizations on our campuses engage in acts that have no place in Texas. Now we must work to ensure that our college campuses are safe spaces for members of the Jewish community. The governor's executive order requires that all higher education institutions in Texas review their free speech policies to establish appropriate punishments for anti-Semitic rhetoric on college and university campuses, ensure that policies that address the sharp rise of anti-Semitic acts are enforced, and include the definition of anti-Semitism in free speech policies. So, this is an executive order targeting what he describes as anti-Semitic acts and rhetoric. In fact, he is ordering colleges in the state to establish appropriate punishments for this rhetoric, which he deems anti-Semitic. And he says explicitly that these offensive statements must be shut down so that college campuses are safe spaces for Jewish people. Now, I seem to remember Republicans spending the past, 10 years complaining about the safe space mentality on college campuses. And now here we have the Republican governor of Texas issuing an executive order commanding college campuses to be safe spaces. So we seem to have lost the plot here somewhere along the line.
You're about to lose your podcast there. At least on the Daily Wire. You'll still have it.
Maybe he likes his chances. I don't know. He's already demonetized on YouTube. I don't think Candace Owens is. She can still get in on some of that YouTube money.
Yeah.
Taking that position right in the middle of the Candace Owens shitstorm, Matt Walsh is a very smart guy. That's a calculated move. He is telling them to go fuck themselves. And I have long said this. I do not agree with Matt Walsh's position on a lot of things. Obviously, we agree. Actually, I can't even say that. We agree on certain elements of the transgender issue, but he goes much further than I would. He dismisses the whole idea of it, or even, adult right to be that.
Right.
I'm not there with him. That having been said, I've always found his reporting on the parts where we do overlap to be reliable in regards to medicine and children and that kind of thing. I've never used anything from him that didn't check out. So my read on him has always been, particularly because of how he handled the YouTube thing, where they did give him the option to keep his monetization. According to him, that choice cost him $400,000 a month. That's what he says he was pulling in. Just like Candace Owens. I said that about her also once I saw more of her. It's not about, do you like them? Do you agree with them? Some people in this space are just straight up grifters. They're just in the space to make money. They'll say whatever they need to do. They're positioning themselves in order to build their brand. I did not read Candace Owens that way based on what investigation I did into her. I don't read Matt Walsh that way. I read him as a guy he's a true believer. He is a genuine, legitimate Christian conservative who, like many Christian conservatives, actually believes that free speech is fundamental to the nation, has what used to be a very liberal belief that, well, if you shut down their speech, they're going to come for yours. That was always the liberal argument. They seem to have forgotten that. So, yeah, I think he's obliquely telling them at the Daily Wire that they don't like what they did with Candace Owens.
Yeah, I read it that way too. And, the point is especially powerful in the sense that this is just a top-down executive order from the governor of the state. I mean, you are imposing these rules and restrictions in the most anti-democratic way you could think of. Certainly far more than like students protesting and, running a speaker out of town. And I don't say that to condone that. I'm just saying, like, that involves some mass movement of people expressing their disapproval of what's happening. Even if a board gets together and decides to cancel a speaker, like I said, I do not condone that whatsoever. But that is even of a more democratic nature than this, whereas the governor of the states just says, no, we have to make special rules after we've already gotten rid of DEI. We have to go in and write a special carve-out protecting Jews and Israeli students from political speech, from speech. Fire said, as they should said, obviously, anyone who harasses anyone or threatens anyone based on their religion, color, orientation, whatever, obviously that is not allowed. But this calls for specifically targeting speech. And it even says that in the statement that Matt Walsh read. That's why I played that over. They acknowledge this is a restriction on free speech. They're not making the formulation that some of the New York universities made, which is that from the river to the sea is harassment, is a threat, therefore it's canceled. No, he just says we need to restrict freedom of speech policies. We need to we need to close the Overton window on this issue. So it's, of course, blatantly, by intent, openly anti-free speech. And the hypocrisy of this is obvious on two fronts. Number one, safe spaces has been a right-wing buzzword for the last decade, as Matt Walsh said.
Amazing
and they just got rid of DEI.
Yeah.
He said safe spaces. Yeah, exactly.
This is really Barry Weiss's vision and Bill Ackerman's vision come to life. That's their vision, right? But Barry Weiss made a long speech about how the answer wasn't for Jews to join DEI, that DEI had to be gotten rid of, but at the same time was arguing that colleges had a responsibility to shut down anti-Semitic speech as she defines it, which clearly is simply being anti-Zionist, is anti-Semitic. This is that vision put into practice. He got rid of DEI and then recreated DEI, but just for Jews.
Yeah, as a specific carve-out. Absolutely. Indeed.
Please clap.